There will be some contact information at the end of the webinar if your question is not answered during this. So let me get started. I'll introduce you to each of our presenters. The first presenter is Craig Lentz, and he's the co-founder of the Windsor Group. It's a management consulting firm focusing on business strategy development and implementation. Their clients include major players within the oil and services, power, process, and E&C sectors worldwide. Previously, Craig was the co-owner of Braxton Associates, an international strategy consulting firm sold in 1984. Prior to returning to business school, he worked as a design engineer for various EPCs. He received his MBA from Sloan School at MIT and has an honors degree in engineering from Penn State University. Our second presenter will be Paul Sutherland, and he is the director of the Solutions Consulting at Software Innovation. He has worked with many EPCs and owner-operators in the design and deployment of Coreworx. Paul will describe and demonstrate one of the work processes available in Coreworx, showing how it can be used to address the problems that Craig describes. And lastly, the last presenter is Deborah Dooley, and she is the MCPIM team leader with Chevron's Major Capital Projects Group. She has worked with the information tech management document control for over 17 years, and at Chevron she has been instrumental in the MCPIM project, Alberta's Hebron project, and in setting up a centralized document control project department for the Major Capital Projects Group. Prior to Chevron, Deborah worked for 15 years on high-profile projects in Canada, the U.S., England, and Scotland, and on offshore projects such as Hibernia, Terra Nova, and White Rose, as well as the Long Lake Oil Sands Project. And she will speak on how Coreworx is used at Chevron. So without further ado, I'm going to pass this over to Craig, and you all enjoy your webinar. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Danette. I think maybe the way I should lead this thing off is I'm sort of here to give a view of 10,000 feet of what's going on for what we would call complex capital projects. It tends to be a very germane thing these days. Maybe the way I should start is I remembered an assignment I had 4 or 5 years ago for a very large publicly traded EPC that basically was having trouble keeping a stock price in sight. They would be up some quarters, down some other quarters. I basically went through and looked at 6 or 8 years of returns from publicly traded EPCs and large constructors. And in fact, when you did that, what you found out is that at any given quarter, 1 in 5 of the earnings reported by these people basically lost money, generally due to bad project execution. So there is an economic issue relative to project execution, which is serious and for these publicly traded companies, and also the collateral damage to the owners when you have projects basically that are over budget or beyond schedule. It's a lumpy business. And what Coreworx basically does with this piece of software is attempt to institute some risk avoidance. Next. Okay, the bullets on the top of the slide are really external, talking about the drivers these days that all of a sudden have made very large capital complex projects occur. The IOCs and the NOCs are having to go to Deepwater, further and further out to find elephants, and basically, hopefully with the AFEs, or at least that's the term for the internal price of oil to make the project sanctionable inside the operator. Even though the AFEs are creeping up a little bit, they're certainly well below the current price of the oil. And for the most part, a lot of these things are on the runway trying to get in a position to take off. When we get to the downstream part, the hydrocarbon development is going near the source of the oil these days and the gas, which basically means that developing countries have lost the magnitude and the number of projects that they would have done over the course of the decades relative to the developing companies. Nuclear power is back. Nuclear power in this country is coming back. There have been 9 or 10 units which actually have been sold, although they have not been necessarily announced yet. These in themselves are very complex projects. And then lastly, there's the issue about building out the infrastructure in developing countries, and we understand that as the industrial projects relative to hydrocarbons begin to flow back into those host countries, they're playing a little bit of a catch-up game here in completing infrastructures. And then on the bottom, now we've got the risk. The costs go up, schedule delays and reworks are very common, unfortunately, particularly in the large offshore projects, as much as they're trying to be eradicated. We've got project teams all of a sudden which now go far beyond the engineering construction firms. We've got OEMs involved. We've got fabricators involved. We have integrators involved for various systems. And in many of the projects, it's just too big for one firm, so we have multiple EPC firms. And then now we've really gotten to the point where they've gotten so big and so busy that, in fact, we need some sort of seamless coordination with the owners and the operators of these projects long before the problems happen. Next. There you go. The big picture of the engineering construction business, think of it as a river. The river basically divides those on the top from those on the bottom. The civil and the public and the infrastructure types of projects are shown on the north side here. The industrial and the private sector types of projects are shown on the bottom. And I've gone through and colored in each of the circles where we now find projects typically in situations where the value of the project, total installed construction, exceeds $1 billion. And you notice this little nest down here on the lower left-hand side, which basically is the hydrocarbon industry, where not only are we talking about the things in the upstream side offshore, but also in the downstream side and the midstream side to build out those pipelines. Next. So typical candidate projects, a lot of these things are hydrocarbon-driven. As the IOCs now find that the PSAs, production sharing agreements they had with the NOCs, are beginning to wither, their future is in deeper and deeper water. We're now comfortable at 6,000 feet. We really do need to get comfortable at 10,000 feet of water depth. And the most recent project that I know of that was completed, at least in the deepest water, was, I think, 8,500 feet Independence Hub. But even the projects which are routinely now done at 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 feet frequently have had execution problems in them. Liquefaction trains for LNG, they're worth over $1 billion a train. These things are put out there in multiple trains. Again, the nuclear power plant issue. And then the four or so on the bottom down there have to do with infrastructure. The third one from that little point, PPI, is the public-private initiative where, in fact, the project may be so big and the country in such a position that it begins to cede some of the responsibility and the concessions and the resulting revenues of the project to the person that builds it. So now we have E&Cs that are not only in the project basis, but in fact in the O&M mode for a project for perhaps to say something like 20 years. The coordination inside that type of situation is very important. Next. This shows you sort of the trend of what's happened in this particular case. It's a collection of downstream hydrocarbon projects. Historically, everything from engineering down to the procurement of materials and equipment were under the control of an EPC. In the last several years, we basically have found ourselves in situations, projects done abroad. We need an in-country JV partner. Some of the scope is taken by him. He does some of his own procurement. And then in the design engineering standpoint, we've outsourced some of the low-cost engineering, mechanical, electrical, piping, structural, etc. Moving forward, we expect to see more of that low-cost engineering, and the lead EPC in these things typically are going to have a lesser percentage of the overall revenue capture than perhaps they did in the past. Next. A couple of snapshots in time. 2 points to be made here. You see we binned this thing in 5-year increments going back about 20 years. Virtually all the downstream projects of any size now are being done in the developing countries, not in the host countries of the U.S. and the Western and the Southeastern Asia EPCs. And what's really happened is the single source EPC has been giving way to EPCs that basically work within JVs or in situations of multiple providers. Next. Here's a snapshot of showing you what's happening in the low-cost engineering universe. Most any EPC player of size has found a way in which to outsource much of the design engineering to a low-cost location abroad. And I've got 3 bars here. One basically takes 13 U.S. firms, one takes 12 European firms, and the latter takes 5 from Southeast Asia, mostly Korea and Japan, and basically shows you where those outsourced locations are. And basically, it's also worldwide. We're talking about a total here, as best I can count, maybe 45,000 of these people distributed around the world, and although they are electronically connected, supervision, oversight on both sides of the wire is important. Change in codes for people working on something they haven't done before. All of this basically introduces a significant amount of complexity in the way these projects have to get designed and executed. Next. So let's take one of these things as an example. In this particular case, I picked upstream offshore. You've been reading a lot in the paper about these projects that are out there in very deep water. Deep water typically is 300 meters or more beyond the point we can actually put a jacket or a tower on the seabed and bring the deck above the water surface. What you see here are 4 super majors, and if I take the information now available, you can sort of look forward a little bit and find out how much of their future oil production basically is going to be done offshore deep water. It is a very complex business when it gets to be in deep water. Like I said before, we're comfortable at 6,000. We'll wind up having to go deeper. And while this chart may look like this thing tails off, again, what happens in the next several years will line some projects up which will be offshore. And I think when you redraw it on an annual basis, the percentage in any of the charts, which is yellow or offshore deep water, will increase as a whole. Next. Everybody's got a stake in it. There are probably close to 400 deepwater fields now. If you basically line them up on who's got the total oil equivalent for those things, you see Chevron, Petrobras, BP at the top, but you also see a whole bunch of U.S. and European independents at the bottom of the list. Everybody has a stake in this business. We are looking at risks here related to cost, schedule, and technology. The first thing these guys do is try to eliminate the technology risk by making sure reliability is the benchmark for anything they decide to put offshore, including the stuff in the seabed. And what Coreworx really does is it attacks the 2 other parts of that risk equation, the cost and schedule execution. Next. Another trend worth talking about offshore is the operator. Before, in fact, they might, in fact, allowed one EPC to be involved in the total project, the scope. Now, more and more, there's an integration team involved in these projects, maybe 80% of the projects. The decisions about the vendors, the decisions about how the thing is sub-segment, and who the lesser primes are in each of the segments are now made with the operator physically sitting in the teams as the project moves forward. The operator has his own departments. The exploration, the production, the facilities department. And again, it makes for a very heterogeneous team to do any one of these projects. Next. We talk about a project. We like to think that we can segment it. We take the 25 or the 30 discrete functions. We dump them in 4 bins here. The upfront, the concept, the pre-concept, the feeds, the design engineering. Then we get into the substructure, the floater itself. Typically fabrication yards in the Far East are now doing this. Then we get to subsea. SURF stands for the subsea wellheads, umbilicals, the risers, and the flow lines. And then lastly, the top sides on top of that floater, the export, the pipelines that have to get the oil to the beach, etc. Most of the projects which are done out now are segmented. So we have different players in each of those 4 silos there. Again, leading to the complexity of coordinating the whole thing. Next. And then things are generally done in forecasted in bins. Here's the last forecast that I did anything with in 2007. It sort of lines up the number of floater units out there forecasted, starting with Petrobras. A rather unique situation from NOC, basically depending on the type of hydrocarbon deposits they have and where they are. But beyond that, what you see is Chevron, Shell, Total, BP, ExxonMobil, even Woodside comes in there. A good collection of NOCs, of majors and independents, all of which are faced with the same situation relative to working in deep water and the risk exposure they have in cost and schedule. Lastly, the players. What's really happened here, the market leaders generally tend to be at the top. When we went to deep water, we really changed the competitive structure of the industry. The old way of doing it is we had a single EPC. The EPC basically had a fabrication yard, had vessels that would tow things out, had heavy derrick barges that would lift things in place. And when we went to subsea completions, we had a bunch of built-for-purpose vehicles. We got into ROVs to do things. We got into installers rather than heavy contractors. And the 3 or 4 guys at the top of the list, in themselves as providers, are in fact combined firms. The legacy of those firms may not have been in offshore EPC. They may have been something else. But by the time they've appended major acquisitions to them, which are the small bars here, you look at the legend up there on the right-hand side, and you recognize that even a Technip or a Saipem or Hydrocarbon or an SBM is in itself a combination of firms with different functional abilities. Okay, back to you, Paul.
Thanks, Craig. Appreciate it very much. I'm going to bring the audience down to ground level. I'm going to discuss one of the key processes that are critical to project success. Before we do that, we're going to just going to summarize some of the key points that Craig brought and how it relates to the Coreworx solution. As you know, as he's indicated, that the makeup of the project team has changed significantly over the last several years and is continuing to change, and is bringing together multiple centers of excellence from around the world. And this calls for a need to have a system that can actually collaborate and manage information with all those widely dispersed engineering teams. Project size is growing, complexity is growing, and the number of projects is growing significantly. It requires a system that can grow with the organization and can handle multiple projects on the same infrastructure. Project costs, the number of projects are increasing significantly as well, and it's imperative that the project can get up to speed quickly and starting using the system immediately. So faster implementation is critical to success of the project and to keep costs down. Labor intensive. We have global teams. You need to have seamless coordination, define standards across the organization. You will be setting up work processes that are inherent in the system, and they must be configurable to be able to move with the changes of the project and with the project team. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Let's talk about bringing it down day to day. A typical dock controller, you'll have multiple project teams that will be dispersed around the world. So you'll have engineering teams in, say, London, England, Jakarta, Singapore, Houston, and they all need to be working on the same project. The dock controller is faced with thousands of files on a daily basis, multiple revisions, both drawings, documentation, emails, and they're accountable for managing all that information coming into the organization or into the project team, through the project team, and then back out to the various suppliers. Assume, too, that the contract has committed turnaround times with respect to sign-off of information as they come through the organization, and that's needed to make sure that the project stays in on time. Of course, project's slightly behind schedule, so the pressures are on to ensure things are accurate and through the organization quickly. And the dock controller, it's imperative they get to the right document, to the right person, at the right time. Next. Fairly busy slide, but let's start from the left and work away from the right. And I'm going to talk about one key work process, and that's called the transmittal work process, or the inbound transmittal, and the full document review in terms of getting a document through the organization. Starting from the left-hand side, you would have an external party. It could be your client, it could be a supplier, it could even be, if you're an owner-operator, it could be your EPC. The external party would log into Coreworx, and they would upload a transmittal work package. And the transmittal package would typically have a cover sheet and many files that they need to upload. They'd send it up on a zip file, and it would be uploaded into Coreworx, and that's all they need to do from there on. Then the dock controller would be notified that there's a package for them to process. What I'll be doing is I'm going to walk you through exactly the process I'm going to show you for it, and I'll use a live demo on our system. So after the work package is uploaded, the dock controller would go into Coreworx. They would have been notified via an email that there's a package to process. They would just need to click on a button, and the system would automatically start to process the package based on the business rules that have been defined. It will do a validation check to make sure numbering ID is correct, the number of files that are supposed to have been sent have been received, and whether you're at the right revision, is that the date's right, and So there's various validation checks that are configurable in Coreworx that allows take some of the drudgery off the dock controller, who's accountable for making sure all that package is correct. Should it fail the validation check, the system will automatically send an email back to the party, to the originator, and advise them of what is wrong with their work package. Passing validation, the system automatically registers the documents into Coreworx and applies all its metadata and proceeds to prepare the package of documents for sending on the particular work process. Now, that part of the process itself today could typically, if it's done using typical Excel spreadsheets or a manual process, could take a dock controller hours to even a couple days before it is actually processed and ready to be sent to the engineers or the reviewers inside the organization. With Coreworx, it's a matter of minutes. You see right away, now we're starting to get to the right information to the right person in a much more timely fashion. The work process, which is configurable inside of Coreworx as well, would then move the document on through the organization, driven by a work assignment sheet, which will dictate exactly which type of document goes to which individuals and what is their accountability as it relates to that document. As the system is processing the information, the dock controller now has the ability to run reports and determine the actual status of the particular work package and documents in the system. No longer do they need to be making phone calls and finding out where the package is, who has it, what's the status. They can do that from just logging into Coreworx. Okay, so let's go right into a live demonstration. I'm going to let pass control. Okay, I'm going to show my screen. All right. What you said, I'm going to log into Coreworx as a supplier, an external supplier. As you can see, they go directly to a landing page. And on the left-hand side, they are given access to only those locations or those projects in which they've been granted permission to. All they need to do, as I said in the slide, is they have to upload their zip file, their transmittal package file. Click. Uploads it. The system automatically unzips the file and starts the initial set of processing. As you can see, there's the file there. The cover sheet is here. I'll just open up the cover sheet, just give you a quick look at a sample cover sheet. Again, this is configurable. You can use any cover sheet that you're working with respect to the organization. So it has the file name, the document ID schema, revision, title. Issue purpose, this is used to help drive the type of work process we want to send this particular information on. So let me log out. So that's the job of the external party. Click, upload the file. No more emails, no more FTP sites, no more CDs, no more paper. Right there, immediately, you start saving time and costs. So log in as the dock controller. They can go immediately to that work package in which was sent to them by the supplier. And there's the package there. So you can see they have more accountability. They may be involved in more projects. They have more control over on the left-hand side. And also, with respect to this package, they now have the ability to process the package. So they're going to process this package. Now Coreworx is doing the validation check. Does it have the right number of files? Does it have the right infrastructure or the schema, document ID schema? Is it the right revision level? What work process should it go on? You can see it is processed correctly. So I've taken one document, I've sent them our notification work process. I've taken the other two documents and set them on a document review process. So they're finished. The system cleans up the folder, generates a log file, keeps a copy of the cover sheet for future processing, and also to maintain the whole audit trail of information coming into the system and how it moves throughout the system. Very critical as we go forward. So we're going to go into the dock controller's inbox. So that's the first stage now. The documents have already been registered into Coreworx. All the particular document containers, and I'll show you in a minute what they look like, and the documents are ready to be sent on the work process. See, there's the first task in the work process. The dock controller at this stage has the ability to define who they want to send the information to, or they've used that work assignment sheet to actually pre-allocate the specific tasks in this work process. As you can see, I do all the work in the organization, so I have to do everything from reviewing to approving. So right here, just with a click of a button, they can now actually even go in and review the document. As you can see, this document's been registered into Coreworx, and it is pre-populated the metadata, which helps connect all the different information inside the system. So in this case here, it's created as doc ID. Again, it's configurable by project, even by document type. We've populated the title, we populated the inbound transmittal number, and we have the file down here as well. So it's ready to go. All right. So let's just move on to the next stage of the work process. They're complete. Submit. I'm going to go off to myself for review. Let's pull that up. I'm now an engineer. My job, I would set this in my in basket, is to review this document and make comments on this document. So I'm going to open up the document again. And as you'll see, I do not have on my laptop or where I'm working from home or where I do not have a DGN native app. So I can open it up with the Redline viewer. And this will allow me to add redline comments to this document, then for review. So in my case here, I'm just going to say that I've reviewed this document and I approve it. Approved. Put it up here. My job is done. I move it on to the next stage of the work process. And I'm going to submit it on to the next stage of the work process, which is the approver. And in this case here, the approver, which is myself again, that's probably one of the few times I can review something and approve it at the same time. I have the ability here to decide whether I want to approve it or reject it. And the work process automatically changes the work status on the document itself or on the document profile. And things are ready now to go on the outbound process. So I'm going to send it back to the presentation. I'll give it back to you. I don't see it anywhere. How do you view Stephen? Oh. Okay, we go. Just 1 second here. We got. Okay. So you see I've taken you right from the external party, registered the documents through the work process, and now the documents are ready for the outbound to go back to the supplier to indicate that it's been approved. Next slide. Behind the scenes, what you saw was that we have a fully robust document control system. Again, fully configurable because all projects are unique in some fashion, and they need to be configured to be aligned to their client's needs, maybe different document numbering schemas, or any other types of attributes or control systems they need. Okay. Coreworx also comes with a fully web-based document graphical workflow designer. So again, you can take that workflow and customize it, configure it, easily configurable on a per-project basis, and you can also add any other type of work process you need for a particular project. Next slide. In conclusion, to summarize what you saw, just with this one work process, is that now you can now start to meet and to follow and to track your compliance towards contract commitments. So you can avoid project delays and penalties. You can now easily using electronic means, upload all files across the internet and with a full audit trail behind it, and reduce your courier costs and your reproduction costs by having your suppliers upload and being forced that way to upload it over the internet. Using work processes, the ability now to do continuous improvement, looking at how long does it take actual steps in a work process, be able to find that. And Coreworx comes with full audit trails, and that'll allow you to manage any litigation costs or any litigation issues that you may have in the future, because you have now a date time stamp of every document that has gone through the system at the provision level, who got it, when they got it, who read it. Finally, it's one process. We've automated the key accountabilities of the document controller, helps to reduce document control costs and effort, allows them now to do control instead of administration work. So in summary, that's what just that one process does within Coreworx and the benefits it brings to the table. Okay, let me hand over to Deborah. Deborah?
Good morning. I'm going to, instead of repeating a lot of what Paul said, which is the same consistent process from the owner-operator side, a lot of business rules that the EPC does is the same thing that the owner-operator on a larger scale. The business units have the same consistency. They have to use the same information, except for the same fact, if one organization will let the suppliers or the contractors bring their information into the Coreworx, our information won't let them come within the Coreworx system, so they'll have a different process that will have their system have a drop box. So we'll have information protection or security that won't let their information be put directly into the Coreworx system, which offers the flexibility of the application. This is some of the key functionality of the reasons why Coreworx was chosen by Chevron. The rapidly configurable, supports geographically dispersed teams, the workflow automation, instant status of all workflows, reporting capability. Also, it's working with a single vendor for the application, and that Chevron has a great working relationship with software innovation to ensure a mutual business needs are met. Next. As with most major capital projects, the team is located globally and requires access to real-time accurate information, maintaining a tight schedule. As you can see here, one of our projects has been dispersed geographically across the entire world. Next. As with any project, a review cycle, whether it's manual or electronic, the information has to be dispersed across teams, whether it's in a business unit, in an engineering team, or a department. If it's dispersed across a geographical or a global team, then if we can do that electronically, it'll help the efficiency. So one of the reasons that Coreworx was chosen is that the review cycle is a major portion of the process of the business, so automating this is tantamount for maximizing the efficiency. As you can see here, it's executed thousands of times each month with global participation. Next. Because Paul spoke about most of the benefits of Coreworx, I'm going to only talk about a couple of the issues. The automated work processes, which ensures compliance, some of the validation rules that we were talking about, which reduces mistakes, offers less cleanup, the audit trails, eliminating time wasted searching for documents. He talked about the fact that fewer document controllers are needed. one of the things that we were talking about earlier is the fact that even though EPCs have the processes in place for document controllers and the information is brought into the system and there's a lot of validation by the Coreworx system, it doesn't mitigate the manual processes that still have to take place, but it does cut down on a lot of the information that can be automated due to business rules. That this is some of the benefits that Coreworx does provide for our processes once they're provided for business rules that are taking place for organizations. With owner-operators, with the amount of EPCs, suppliers, contractors, or subcontractors that are out there, it provides more and more that's there that they have to obtain on a more content. So it maximizes more and more of the information that they have to obtain outside. This ensures that any information that the team requires has to be real time, and it any DMS system that's used by the team.
They're not an exhibitor for sure.
Has to make sure that it's.
Yeah, they're not an exhibitor.
It's reliable. So as one of the team players that we have here put in accurate information, in the end, the result was to improve the quality of information and to use automation to overcome the availability shortage of experienced personnel due to the number of projects going into execution over the next several years. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you for checking.
Wonderful. Thank you all very, very much for the webinar. I appreciate that so much. We do have several questions that came in, and I'm going to go ahead and ask you those. The first one that came in was, does Coreworx only handle documents, or does it work for data as well, i.e. dimensions, utilities, etc.?
Coreworx is predominantly document-centric. But the metadata is easily definable to handle some of the data elements. So it is not an engineering tool, such as MicroStation or AutoCAD or like that. It is not an engineering tool like that. But it manages all the information pertinent to a project.
All right. The next question is, have they considered using... Sorry, my screen just went up. Consider using email to accept documents. Many of the EPCs have document management systems that route documents via email. Otherwise, this puts an extra burden on the sender.
Good question. A lot of the EPCs and owner-operators I've dealt with, many are trying to even get rid of email because of this lack of the audit trail. Coreworx workflow engine can route documents via email if it's so configured, if that's the way they wish to work. But many are trying to move away from the email environment and work inside of a particular workflow engine such as Coreworx.
Okay, and the next question, we've got several coming in. How does the system integrate multiple reviewers' red line information in a drawing so all reviewers are aware of the other reviewers' comments?
The red line tool allows for, it basically makes an annotation layer on top of the red line. At this stage, we handle two predominantly type of redlining tools. We use either Brava or another tool called Rasterex. The viewer would have to, there's no, I would say, real-time viewing of the individual's redlining as one's creating it, the other can't see it. they both can work on the document at the same time.
Okay. The other question is, how do you integrate with project schedule data?
Project schedule data, good question. Such as probably Primavera or other tools such as that. They typically would be probably using milestones relative to work packages, and it is possible through dates and that we can export particular information from our system that could be imported into either Primavera or Microsoft's work project. An import-export approach.
Okay. Next question is, what is the level of complexity of setting up workflows?
Well, I think we have probably one of the most sophisticated workflow engines on the market that's web-based. It would probably, I would say you would probably, in an organization, assign a couple individuals to become your workflow experts and not give it to just a regular individual, but it is basically a drag-and-drop type of workflow construction engine designer.
All right. The questions are still coming in.
Good.
Yeah, this is great. Does Coreworx enable collaboration on 3D engineering models?
Could you repeat that again, please? Because Coreworx...
Does Coreworx enable collaboration on 3D engineering models?
Coreworx does handle 3D engineering models as a document. Our redlining tool can display 3D models, but again, Coreworx is not an engineering tool such as Bentley or others that manage this kind of systems. It is basically, we looked at Coreworx being the primary repository of information, and then if the engineer wants to make individual design changes to it, they would then export the file or get the file or actually check out the file from Coreworx, work it inside the design tool, and then check it back in and register it back into Coreworx.
All right. Does Coreworx have the ability for the replication of content data to geographically dispersed areas?
Yes. So what I understand you're saying is that can you have the replication servers across the world, you mean? I think that's what I meant.
I don't know. Just have the ability for replication of content data. Yeah, to geographically dispersed. Yes, I'm assuming that's what it is.
Yeah, our back-end databases are either SQL or Oracle, and we leverage their technology.
Okay, and they would. Can we see a demonstration of the doc search function?
We can set up a future webinar on that. Absolutely. That's again one of the key attributes of Coreworx to be able to find information. It goes down to the expertise or defining the type of metadata that you want to link the document, but it's very simple to do, either full content search or full metadata search, but I'd be more than happy to set up a full webinar just on Coreworx demonstration.
Okay. Another question is it possible for suppliers to see each other's data?
No. You can, using our roles-based security, we have very granular permission settings. You can allow that, or you can actually prevent individuals from seeing a document even down to the individual document profile level.
All right. The next question is, can Coreworx handle reference files in drawings?
Yes, it can. It can handle reference files with respect to AutoCAD and MicroStation drawings, yes.
All right. Does the system assume a minimal connection to facilitate large file transfers for overseas participants, or is there a replication system of some sort?
A very similar question before, but yes, you have to be cognizant of the internet, your internet connectivity. Trying to download a 10 meg file over a 56K line does have its limitations. It is faster than the post office, but it does have its limitations. We do take into consideration network connectivity through looking at compressing files, zipping up files, and using such technology as Ajax to again speed up the connectivity over internet and over server technology.
Okay, and there's just a couple more. this one I don't know, it might have been answered, but we'll go ahead and ask it. Can Coreworx automatically create associations between related information, say data sheets, drawings, models, etc.?
Absolutely. Using our functionality called relationships, you can easily link multiple documents together, so you can easily transverse from one document to the other. You can also leverage the metadata to be able to pull together documents and work packages, yes.
How many different workflows is typical? 100, 200?
What we're finding is you're probably in the tens to 20s. Depends on the work processes that each project or each company wants to put in place. An example, when you're leveraging something like a doc review process and using a work assignment sheet, immediately determines which individuals should see the particular document. And that's all leveraging one particular workflow.
Okay, and the last question that just came in is, how does Coreworx handle multi-part files, such as P3 schedule, Caesar 2 data files, etc.?
Good question. Don't have an answer for that. I'll have to get back to you on that one.
All right. Well, great. This was a wonderful webinar. We had a great amount of questions, and it sounds like you all have a wonderful project ahead of you as well. I would like to thank everybody for attending tonight, and thank you again to Craig, Paul, and Deborah for putting on this webinar. And just to let everybody know that it is online, that we will have this presentation on our website by the end of the week. And to stay tuned on May 20th for our next webinar series, which will be by NoteVault, and the speaker would be Peter Lansky. Thank you again. I appreciate it, and we will see you all later. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.